Hi, this is Barry Snedden, the Director of Communications at Reloop. We launched this podcast earlier this year, Reloop's 10th year, and our mission has always been to deliver concise insights on key circular economy issues with the voices of activists, experts, and policy leaders from around the world. And in this special year-end episode of the Reloop Brief, we're revisiting some highlights from the conversations that we've had across the year. One of the most memorable stories this year came from the grassroots champion on a paddleboard. Merijn Tinga, better known as the Plastic Soup Surfer, embarked on a 1,250-kilometre expedition from Paris to Nice this summer, and he joined us on the podcast live from his paddleboard.
I started a petition for the deposit return scheme, and to attract attention, I built a surfboard made from plastic bottles, and I surfed that from the Netherlands to England, so across the North Sea. Got 60,000 signatures, handed those over to the politicians in Parliament, and also wrote my own resolution with it. And that resolution actually became the basis for the policy that got deposit return schemes instated in the Netherlands. And after that was instated and introduced, we saw the effect. So 80% less littering of bottles and cans in the Netherlands. So in 2023, I decided to try and convince other countries doing the same. I had a lot of experience by that time talking to CEOs of big supermarkets and also soda companies advocating for deposit return. I thought I might as well try and get other countries which don't have deposit return schemes start as well. I feel, especially when it comes to plastic pollution and littering, it's something that litter pickers and small NGOs can really influence. And that's what I've seen in the Netherlands. And that's what I try to empower the litter pickers here in France and back then in England as well.
Merijn's story is the perfect example of how one person's passion can influence an entire country's approach to plastic waste. From Europe to North America, activists are turning local concerns into global conversations. We also heard from Jackie Núñez this year. She's the founder of the Last Plastic Straw movement. Jackie spoke about the rollback of the US government policies aimed at reducing single-use plastics. Her perspective reframed the quote-unquote plastic straw debate into a call for broader action against our throwaway culture.
Yeah, when I first started the Last Plastic Straw movement in 2009, it was a lot of data coming out about plastics in the ocean. And they were all saying we need people to have behavior change. Like we need to, and of course it's easy to blame the customer, but we realize as we go up the chain that it's not on the individual. It's kind of a whole system behind all the single-use plastic production. But I wanted to stop it from the source. The analogy we often use, if you walk into a bathroom and the tub is overflowing, you don't start mopping. Like, you want to turn off that tap. But I was just as overwhelmed as everybody else and didn't know where to start when I got the aha moment about the plastic straw. And I could see that it was literally in front of people's noses, but we weren't taking stock of it, right? So it was just a way to engage people on the subject of single-use plastics. Because I would tell people, like, if you think about it, that straw that you did not ask for, that came in your drink, and maybe you used or maybe you didn't, is going to outlive you in generations to come in our environment. Is that the legacy you want to leave? But you can say that about most single-use products. And there's a quote I like, and it's from Slow Factory that says, everything we make comes back to the earth as either food or poison.
For advocates like Jackie, the key message is that we need big picture solutions, not just headline-grabbing fixes. Turning off the plastic tap means addressing the entire system of how we produce, use, and dispose of materials. And as she suggests, that requires looking beyond anecdotes and symbols to understand the full scope of the problem, which is where solid data becomes essential. Evidence-based policy is at the heart of Reloop's work, and 2025 saw a strong emphasis on data to drive change. In a special episode of the Reloop Brief, we were joined by CEO Clarissa Morawski to discuss findings from Reloop's fact sheet, Littered with Evidence, proof that deposit systems work.
Beverage containers like plastic bottles, aluminum cans, and glass bottles are consistently among the most littered items in the world, and they account for over half of all food and beverage packaging sold globally in terms of units. We're talking about 1.3 trillion of these containers sold every year. And in many regions, up to half of them, or even more, are never even properly collected. And that means hundreds of billions of bottles and cans ending up in our environment, our landfills, our incinerators, or worse, just dumped or scattered in nature. Our global analysis shows that when a deposit return system is introduced, beverage container litter drops dramatically, on average by 57%, and in some cases over 70% within 1 or 2 years. And these are not projections or theoretical models or wishful thinking. This is now real world before and after data from places like Slovakia, Ireland, Netherlands, Australia, and several US states. It's the strongest evidence to date that deposit return systems are the most effective and immediate solution for tackling this specific waste problem.
Clarissa's data-driven insights make it clear why credible evidence is so crucial to tackling waste. It's one thing to have a great idea or a passionate movement, but to scale up solutions, you need proof that they work and transparency about the outcomes. The theme of turning data into action came up again when we spoke to Jason Wilcox, that's Reloop's data and dashboard manager. Jason took us behind the scenes of how Reloop builds tools to translate evidence into policy impact. He described the development of Reloop's 2 live dashboards, What We Waste and the Global Deposit Dashboard, which takes data, makes it interactive, easy to understand, and with visuals.
The first stage is to collate all those multiple spreadsheets so that all the data is in one place, and then it can be looked at from a bird's eye view, for lack of a better way of putting it, because when I'm gathering the data, half the time I do not know what it's going to tell me. And at best, I have a hypothesis about what it might say. So then, once all the data is in one place and I can sort of filter it via this channel or that channel, the patterns emerge. So for What We Waste, for example, it was fairly obvious that the countries that have DRS are likely to produce less waste. But until we actually pieced together the recycling rates, the sales, and could see it from above, that's when we realized the patterns that emerge aren't just a pattern, they are actually a fact. They are clear as day.
This year was also notable for major strides in deposit return policy across the world. Australia, for example, reached a landmark moment. With the state of Tasmania launching its container deposit scheme, Australia became the first continent fully covered by deposit systems. On the podcast, Reloop's Pacific Director Rob Kelman reflected on this and what it took to get there.
Well, in terms of packaging EPR, we have container refund schemes across all states. Every state has a slightly different scheme, but they're all sort of harmonised. A 10-cent refund and similar eligibility of containers, but little bits of variation. And we know from surveys that consumers don't see a refund value as a financial impost. The support levels for these schemes is super high, 80% plus. I've just had another survey done for an inquiry in Queensland, and overwhelmingly across all political persuasions, the support is very high, and the support for an increase in the refund value in Australia is also extremely high. And some people under financial stress in particular support that because they see it as a way to raise additional funds for themselves. And what we've also seen from previous analysis of data is that there isn't a drop-off in sales when these schemes are introduced, which again is testament to the fact that consumers, they understand that they get it back. Even if there's a few cents additional fees, that the net cost of the scheme, it's overwhelmingly seen as not as a tax, but as a deposit.
From Australia to Europe and beyond, these conversations showed that deposit return is truly becoming a global movement. What began in scattered programs is now a trend spanning entire continents, and it's driven by a mix of citizen advocacy, solid evidence, and political will. 2025 didn't bring overnight success everywhere, but it cemented a foundation for broader adoption of circular economy policies in the years to come. Reloop continues to champion data, forge partnerships, and help shape policy that push for circular solutions, all in an effort to realise our mission, which is to see a world where resources remain resources. And throughout that journey, Reloop's core values have remained the same: to inform, connect, and inspire people towards a positive change. Now, if you've been inspired to listen to any of the previous episodes of the Reloop Brief, you can do that now at reloopplatform.org. Thanks again for listening to this special year-end edition of the Reloop Brief. And for now, season's greetings, happy holidays, and the best for the new year from all of us at Reloop.